Getting to atrophy there.
Camera's rolling, camera's rolling. Stand speak still.
All right, Shane Embury, take one. Thank you for doing this.
Okay. Hello.
I want to start by talking about your influences back in the early days, sort of going back to the early to mid 80s. But before we talk about the specific bands that you were listening to and you were into, what was the state of metal in England in the early to mid 80s? I mean, obviously Priest and Maiden were big at this time.
Well, yeah, I mean, from an early age, the guitar-based rock metal was always popular in England. You know, you watch a program called Top of the Pops, which is a weekly thing, you know, on the charts. You know, I mean, from an early age, I remember seeing Slade and The Sweet when we were this big, you know. So that was the guitar thing for me. Got into Priest in the early mid-70s. The early 80s, you know, the top 10 single charts, you would have Iron Maiden, Saxon, Motorhead, Judas Priest in the top 10. This is like 81, 82, 1983. Yeah. So, that was my upbringing, you know. Yeah. For me, all those bands were like my favorite bands, you know. Right. And so that was the early 80s, buying the records. It was every week, you know, metal was pretty big, you know.
Yeah.
Obviously not for everybody, for me, it was my thing, you know.
When I was doing some reading on the band and about you and your musical background, Celtic Frost came up, and I wanted to ask you, were you influenced by what they were doing at that time?
Yeah, I mean, again, I think there was two different factions of people. There was the people who got into metal, got into Metallica and Slayer, and kind of stopped at that, you know. But me and my friends, we went further. We wanted Celtic Frost. We wanted Bathory, Hellhammer, Sepultura, Voivod, bands like this, you know. We wanted the harder stuff, you know. So originally, Celtic Frost were like, you know, to me, the next step from Venom, because Venom was one of my favorite bands ever, you know. But so I wanted more, and then Celtic Frost came along with you know. Also, I was a bit young and impressionable, so the Satan thing, I was like, you know, all that kind of stuff. So I loved, you know, Celtic Frost. Also, they're kind of interesting band because their sound was more raw, and even though it was metal, it was kind of basic. It actually appealed to a lot of my friends who were punks. Right. It kind of bridged the gap in it in a weird way for some reason. I don't know why, but yeah, they were a pretty important band, you know.
They also had kind of, fairly early on, they had like kettle drums and different things that they were kind of throwing into the music that was a bit different for its time.
As they moved on as a band, they certainly added stuff, you know, which again, you know, being in Napalm, that even though we were totally into playing fast and heavy, we listened to lots of other musical stuff, and Celtic Frost were probably one of those only bands that brought that in, you know, a lot of the more kind of industrial, sort of weird gothic elements, which some bands didn't really do, you know. They were probably one of the first as they went on to do that, I think.
You know, and the word extreme gets thrown around a lot these days, but back then, I mean, was Celtic Frost doing something that was extreme in terms of music, in your view?
Yeah, I mean, there was a bunch of bands, really. And back then, of course, it's different how it was now, so the production techniques were totally different, you know. And we were getting up on the sounds, you know, really, that were coming out. I mean, their guitar sound was very distorted, and the kind of notes that Tom Warrior used was different to that of Slayer or Metallica. It was less clear in some ways, but that was different and sort of new and interesting to us, you know. I mean, Voivod were another band that, to me, were just pushing constantly as well, you know.
You mentioned Venom, too. What was it about what they were doing at that time that really captured your imagination?
Well, I think, again, growing up on Sabbath, you know, being a young kid, I was totally into the whole dark occult thing, you know, and that was it, because I've been a fan of horror films and all that kind of stuff. It just all made sense. Yeah. So there used to be a weekly paper called Sounds, and Venom were on there, you know. They're out of the gravestone. I'm like, I've got to check this band out, you know. And I bought Welcome to Hell. And my dad was working on nights, so he was sleeping during the day, so I put the headphones on, you know, and this album just comes out, and so this is the best thing I've ever heard in my entire life, you know. And it was bad production, but I didn't really care. It was just that, when you listen, the more cleaner their production got, understood the riffs more, but because I couldn't understand exactly what was going on with that first album, it just seemed totally different.
Right.
And just totally noisy and abrasive, and the next step, you know, to me that was like, okay, I love my Sabbath and I love my Priest, but now it's Venom.
Yeah.
And that was my next step.
That's cool. And then obviously you mentioned Slayer, and Slayer in those early years, you know, you think of Show No Mercy, Haunting the Chapel, Hell Awaits, those first records. What would, you know, and obviously Slayer went on to be a really big band. What were they doing at that time that was different than, say, Venom or Celtic Frost?
Again, I'm no sound engineer or anything, but it was just each band, I think, back then had identity, you know, be it through the production or whatever. That Venom had a different sound, Metallica had a different sound, Slayer, again, had a different sound. They were kind of pushing the satanic imagery of, like, Venom, but it was faster. You know, the riffs were slightly, in some respects, more hardcore influenced as well, mixed in, you know. And again, it was like stepping stones. It was like, well, I'm totally chuffed with my Venom. I love my Venom. And now Slayer's doing this thing faster, you know. And the Show No Mercy album was like killer. And then I remember buying their Haunting the Chapel on import because you couldn't buy that, you know. It cost, I don't know, $15. It came through, put it on, and I was like, Jesus fucking Christ, you know. It's like, it's even faster. Yeah. And at that point, it was like all about the speed for me as well, you know. Everything had to be faster. And that's, I guess, what I'm here.
Yeah, the speed is obviously an important part, but I guess also thinking about Slayer at that time, I mean, they could really play. I mean, they had a guy like Lombardo on drums, and they had these solos as well.
Well, there was, I mean, technically more progressive than Venom were, I guess, you know. I mean, that was the different thing, but I think what I liked about Venom was, especially that first album, was like a noisy kind of mishmash of everything. And Slayer was a bit more, obviously, more perfect in that way, for sure, you know?
Yeah. The other part of your influences I wanted to talk about is more on the kind of anarcho-punk side of the spectrum, bands like Discharge, Swans, Disorder, and so on. Why did you like these bands? What were they doing that excited you?
Well, again, it's, as I said, I briefly mentioned with Celtic Frost, at the time, early 80s, and then especially when I started hanging around with the guys in Birmingham, the scene where Napalm Death were playing, it was an interesting time because bands like Venom, Voivod, Slayer, Motorhead, people into them were, even though there was metal kids into them, it wasn't as widespread as it is now. A lot of the people that were getting into them were punks because they saw the energy and the aggression very similar to bands like GBH, Exploited, Discharge, things like that. So that's where it started to cross over. And my first band, the guitarist, his cousin, was telling into Exploited and Discharge and Broken Bones. And he was saying, well, God, if you like Venom, check this out. So he put on Hear Nothing, See Nothing, Say Nothing. And it, to me, sounded almost the same in some respects because the production and the sounds that were coming out of the speakers were just very similar. You know, the riffs and the aggression and energy. And because to me, it was all about, not just about the speed, but the power that was coming out. I'm like, well, I like this as well. And so me and other friends, we started to cross over. You know, it just seemed to be natural to start listening to hardcore punk as well. The difference with them, obviously, was lyrically, it was a little bit more grounded, obviously, than the Satan thing. And so that's where mentally I started to change a little bit, you know, kind of like, I dropped the inverted cross a little bit and said, hey, I'll just chill out a little bit on that and just, I didn't sort of open my head completely to the whole political thing, but I embraced the fact that, you know, these bands had something to say.
Well, I wanted to ask you about that. Yeah, these bands are obviously coming from a very different lyrical direction. Was there something attractive to you, but that they were talking about everyday experiences, things that were actually going on, as opposed to, you know, Countess Bathory?
Well, I mean, it was important to me and other friends, and it was an eye opener, really, you know. Because even though as kids growing up listening to metal, we were embracing the whole imagery thing, and I still like bands that have that imagery. I perhaps didn't feel I was 100% akin to it as maybe other people. So when I come across bands that were singing about more real things, problems that, you know, everyone was going through and stuff, that made a bit more sense to me. I mean, I sit on the fence a little bit as opposed to Barney, our singer, perhaps. I'm just, you know, I'm not as politically motivated as a lot of people, really, but I did like the fact that these bands had something different to say as opposed to, you know, Hail Satan and whatever, you know. But
I want to kind of turn into turn towards Napalm Death's music, and before we do that, what was the state of England at that time, early to mid '80s? What was England and Birmingham like?
Well, I mean, it's sort of hard to say. I mean, I was 17, 18, so, and I'm from outside Birmingham. Growing up, but I mean, it's pretty thriving. I mean, it wasn't. I mean, there's areas of depression, as there is now, and I mean, I was just picking up on the music really. I mean, I wasn't like totally being the most socially, conscious person as such, but gigs were the live scene was very vibrant. I mean, I was happy when I met the guys that were in before I joined Napalm. When I met those guys, there was a whole punk scene that I didn't know was happening in Birmingham, which is really, really cool. Real down to earth bands playing, and real like 7-8 band festivals for like £2-3. It was like a real cheap thing to go and see, and it was scene wise, it was great as regards that. I mean, Birmingham, it was kind of a thriving place really, as ever. I mean, I didn't really have any other views other than that, I guess.
And I know you. Yeah, sure, okay.
And Shane Embury, take 2.
Why do you think Napalm Death went in that more direction of the kind of socially aware, for lack of a better phrase, than going down that more kind of typical metal occult direction?
I mean, primarily Napalm Death, it's a strange history to the band because it originally formed in a bedroom in 1981. I mean, there's no original members in the band now. So the 2 members, Miles Ratledge and Nicholas Bullen, they were punk guys. They were anarcho punk guys, And when they started Napalm Death, it wasn't until around about '86 really that it started to speed up and become what you know now. But lyrically, it was always really rooted in the anarcho punk movement because they were influenced by Crass and stuff like that. So that was the basis for the band, more than the music probably at that point. Which is one of the main. I mean, Barney feels very strongly as well, and I think that's why he pushes lyrically that still through to this day, theme-wise. But it was that meeting point that when I met those guys, they were getting into Celtic Frost and stuff like that.
Right.
It was kind of the first 5 years of Napalm. Musically, is very different in some respects. They were, they're kind of like Disorder, I think, really, musically, till '86 when Mickey Harris joined. Yeah. And then they all started listening to Celtic Frost and some death metal stuff, and then it started. The hybrid thing happened, where the fast hardcore punk was mixed with the slow metal parts of Celtic Frost. But lyrically, because of the original members of the band, it was always deeply rooted in the anarchist movement, really, because they were punks.
Well, the interesting thing, not to beat it over the head, but the interesting thing about you guys, I think, is that it's partly that you stayed that lyrical direction that kind of made you a unique creature in a way, that you had this metal following, you had a very metal sound, and yet you always had this lyrical direction.
Yeah, I mean, it's a strange thing. I mean, I say it's the backbone of the band, and the people that came into it around the '86, '87 period when Scum came out, the metal kids that came in, Bob, me primarily. That's when I was changing a little bit. Yeah. I was crossing over, and they were crossing over. So, but it always seemed totally important to us lyrically to keep the theme of Napalm Death obviously that way.
Right.
Again, going away from the fact that I never really felt. I say I'm not the biggest political speaker or whatever, but I'm not like into the dark and Satan thing neither. It's and it seemed more relevant for Napalm Death to go that way, really. Sure.
I want to move into the speed of the band, which you've touched on. Take me back to that time and describe, how, I mean, you guys were really fast for that time. Why were you driven to play at this blistering tempo?
Well, again, I say, we were part of, through Bill from Carcass, we used to tape trade together. Bill, who obviously used to play guitar for Napalm Death before Carcass. And so we were listening to bands from the States and from Europe who were also playing pretty fast. And there's this big tape trading community. There was no albums. It was all rehearsal tapes and demos. So that was influencing us. The drummer at the time, Mickey Harris, just wanted to play fast and faster. Every week we would play shows, and it would be like, well, okay, how fast is he going to play this week? And he would just speed it up. It was totally the thing we were motivated. That was all we cared about, was playing really fast, you know. And there were other bands. I mean, the band Repulsion from the US, you know, in '86, they were pretty damn fast as well. Yeah. But for some reason, Napalm Death, I think, got there first, I guess. I don't know, you know, in some respects.
Won the war.
A little bit. I mean, I think over here, perhaps in the mid-'80s, they're looking to Europe maybe for the music. I don't know. And it was just something about Napalm that struck a chord, I guess, you know. Again, lyrically, probably as well. You know, it was a whole mixture of things that came in with Napalm. There was the metal edge, there was the speed edge, but also we were into industrial, really early, harsh industrial stuff like Throbbing Gristle or Test Department. So we would mix it all up, you know. Right. All of us were like totally changing musically. Yeah. So I think that kind of helped.
But why did you like playing so fast? Like
it just seemed the logical thing. At that point, it was just like, again, all my life, it seemed like a stepping stone from all the bands I got into, you know. Right. So Metallica, Slayer, you know, Venom, Discharge, and then with Napalm, we're like a punk band from Boston called Siege, who were really fast. Japanese hardcore band called SOB, they were playing fast. Repulsion, you know, blast beats, and it was just like, how fast can we play, you know?
Yeah. Is this just the teenage urge to?
A little bit, but I still get into. I still like it now if it's done well. I mean, you know, I've broadened my horizon musically, so to speak. But I mean, I still love a blast beat, you know. If it's done well and it's exciting, something very exciting to me about it, you know. Right. When it's not over processed, a lot of the time nowadays, I think the production on some albums, the blast beats become less effective. I prefer the older productions where it wasn't perfect, and it was just complete chaos, you know. But we were all about that. We were 18, 19. We were all very excitable people. There was a scene in Birmingham where there were shows every weekend, and like Napalm Death would play, Amoebic, Sacrilege, Chaos UK, Heresy, all these punk bands, DRI would come over. And it was just like, we'd go back to our friend's house after the show, and we'd stay up all night listening to demos, you know, of like fast hardcore metal bands, you know. Someone sent us a tape of Raining Blood in advance, so we'd be playing that going, shit, listen to this, and freaking out, you know, speed.
It's interesting what you say about the blast beat now versus then, because I was listening to some of your early stuff this week, and it's teetering on the edge of complete chaos. Yeah. Whereas the blast beat now is it's all very controlled. I mean, a lot of music is very controlled now because of the way it's made, but something about it back then, it seemed to be sort of teetering on this edge of like complete chaos.
I think sometimes production has a lot to do with that. I mean, where even with Napalm, the albums are so-called produced, it's still heavier and abrasive, but they're produced a little bit better than years ago where no one really knew what they were doing with the sounds. And that actually adds to it in some respects. I mean, we've been talking about that a lot between ourselves where we're almost trying to unlearn what you've learned, you know, because when we listen to some of the older productions, there's a magic about that kind of that sound, you know, and again a chaos about it, you know. It's nice for people to put something on and then they're kind of frightened about it. When you put something on, it becomes too safe. It's not interesting really.
So, in layman's terms, what is the blast beat?
Well, blast beat would be the way I would describe it. I mean, you've got a rock beat like that, you know, and a Slayer beat. That's what I call a Slayer beat, you know. And then it's like double that. I'd say it's just like a beat that just gets faster and faster and faster. But now there's millions of different beats. All the new bands is like bomb blasts and all kinds of. I lose track of the many forms of blast beat that there is now. You know, but that was the original blast beat for me, the one. You know, there's the kick, there's the snare, you're going. Right. But there's 10 billion variations now. You know. And
did Mick Harris coin the term?
He certainly coined the term blast beat. You know, and also grindcore. He came up with grindcore, for sure. On one of his mad rampaging treks through the van at night. But Repulsion in '86 were definitely doing that blast beat as well, you know. And so, you know,
it just seemed to fit.
You know, it's just for us, we just things were just getting faster, you know.
And then about that term, the interesting thing about the grindcore term is, at least for what we're doing, which always has something metal on the end of it. So death metal, black metal, extreme metal. This was something different. It came from somewhere else. Grindcore. Why? What was this word describing?
Well, I mean, I guess this is kind of destroying a popular myth as well in some respects. Mickey the old drummer from Napalm. You have to meet the guy to understand it. He's a completely insane character.
We're interviewing him. We're going to Birmingham.
Oh,
So we're gonna see.
well, there you go. Okay.
We're going to have a lot of tape.
I hope you've got enough, tape here. So he's very excitable. But he'll probably have a different variation on it, perhaps. But the grindcore thing, as I remember it, he would use things like, oh, this album grinds, because I mean, when you tape trading as well, you would have your tape trading list, and you would say, okay, I've got the new Sacrifice live in Toronto '85, and it kills. That's how we term that terminology. But Mickey would take that terminology to grinds. To him, Swans was a grindcore band, even though they were slow. It was not just the blast beat; it was the sound being, just like a fucking cement mixer, really. So that's why he came up with the term grindcore. I think some people think it just has to be fast punk metal. It can be really slow as well. It's more about the abrasive sound, the distortion on the bass, everything on at 10 pushing really. But that was just Mickey. Mickey had a million words for everything.
Do you ever get people telling you you're too old to do this?
Not yet. I feel it sometimes, but then I think, no, not yet.
Okay.
Down speed. Shane Embury, take 5.
I suppose there's this preconception that, maybe it says for metal in general, not just extreme metal, but that we somehow should outgrow this at some point.
There's absolutely no chance of that happening at all. In fact, I get worse. Especially with the grindcore death metal thing. There's a million bands blasting away, but as I said, every now and then, I'll just click on a link someone will send me and be totally gobsmacked by this one band, and I'll go, "That's killer." I'll listen to it and go, I'll just pick up a guitar and that'll give me an idea for something with Napalm. It's like certain bands will just have a collective about them, which will influence me for a particular track. Perhaps it may not be the entire track; it might just be something. There's always I never outgrow this really.
Do you get something different out of it now than you did back when you were a teenager?
To some extent, because I probably understand the mechanics of it a little bit more. Obviously I can play better now than I did back then, I suppose. So you understand the whole way a song gets put together. But then there are some things that come out of the blue with some bands that totally surprise me, and I'm like, how the hell did they do that? And that makes it interesting.
So why do you think that a lot of the bands we're talking to for this are on the extreme end of the musical spectrum, and is very, very far away from what most people listen to in their daily lives? Why do you think this extreme music endures?
I don't know. You can say cliche things like society or your job, or if life's particularly down for you right now, if you're going through a bad period of time, I think there's something inside certain people it clicks with. I had friends who wanted to, didn't want to listen past Metallica. They were happy with that. But for me and my other friends, we just wanted to keep on searching for extreme things. And other people are like that. They want, something more. They want an energy or an aggression. For some people, they like to come to shows and get out of their system. And for some people, I speak to people who are really calm. I've got some of my friends who are really calm individuals, but they listen to the most crazy, violent music. So it's therapeutical to them. Yeah. So there's many reasons. I think it certainly serves a purpose for many people. It's an outlet. I think to some extremes. But there's something inside you as well. You're drawn to it. Can't quite explain that really.
It's not going away either. It's not going away either.
No, it's not going away. I'm quite interested to see what's coming out when I'm 60. Actually, I'm looking forward to that. It's going to be some bright fucking mad bands. It's going to be great.
Thank you, Shane. It was a pleasure.
Cool.
Appreciate your time. Thank
Cheers.
you.